I start off this World Eater by applying a shade of Scale 75 Walnut over white primer. I decided to use Walnut here because, unlike the Star Phantom I did last week, I want this World Eater's armor to look more sun-bleached and less blue, so I figured that this brown would be a good starting point. You can check out the Star Phantom video in the upper right hand corner though if you're looking for a cooler white scheme. It could also work here. For this shade, I focus on parts of the model that are the furthest away from my perceived light source and would be in shadows. I'm not super careful here though, as I'll be applying other layers on top of this, so I primarily am looking to get a good base shade down I can build up in the next steps. After the walnut is down to my liking, I apply a layer of Medea ComArt Opaque White as a zenithal highlight over the entire model. This step helps to dull down and blend the walnut from the previous step, and gives the model some subtle volumetric highlights. And that's pretty much it for the white before we get into weathering. So next I move on to the blue shoulder pads and backpack. These are done fairly simply, with a first base coat of Arianhod blue over white primer, followed up by a zenithal highlight of Amarth blue, both from the Scale Color Games and Fantasy range. Next up I hit the model with a quick coat of gloss varnish and apply a couple of decals across the shoulder pads as well as on the knees. Once these are dry, I apply one more layer of varnish and move on to weathering. I next apply a pin wash of burnt umber oil paint over the entire model, but unfortunately I forgot to film this step, so all I can really show you is the end result. I also add a couple streaks of engine grime here to add a little more variation to the armor. I do this by first applying a pretty thin horizontal stripe of the engine grime, and then gently wiping away most of it with a brush dampened with mineral spirits. I normally use sponge chipping on models to define the edges and provide a worn, beat up, and battered appearance that I really like. But in this model, I'm using it for something a little bit different in my mind. Sure, some of this chipping could represent the normal wear and tear you'd see on the battlefield, but to me, one of the brutal realities of a World Eater Marine is how just absolutely devastating their chain weaponry can be. And if these chain axes and chain swords are hitting armored ceramite, I have to imagine some of that ceramite would kick back and cause even more scratches and scrapes across the Marine's armor. And well, as we'll get to a little bit later, beyond just ceramite, I think a little bit more stuff would spray back, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. So for now, I start off with a layer of sponged on petroleum gray for the first layer of chipping, and then do a second layer of just pure white after that. For the brass armor, I wanted to do something that looked pretty old and worn. So I started off with a layer of Scale 75 Decayed metal, and did a kind of half overbrush, half dry brush with some Victorian brass. As you can see here, I kind of angle the brush against the edges of the model and try to highlight a good chunk of it with Victorian brass, but leave the deepest recesses the Decayed metal color. To add a little more color to the metal though, and to give an appearance of a oxidized or verdigris look to the brass, I took some extremely thinned down Caribbean blue and applied this fairly heavily around the rivets and in the recesses of the metal. I don't know the exact mixture of water to Caribbean blue here, but as you can see, it's fairly thin. I finished off the brass by doing a very slight edge highlight of Peridot Alchemy to give the metal a little more luster and shine. For the chain weapons, I start by painting off the main body of them with a flat black, and then gradually sponge on layers of petroleum gray, brown gray, and rainy gray, with each subsequent layer of sponging getting closer and closer to the edge of the weapon. I use sponge chipping here, as I feel like these weapons would be pretty beat up from their use, and the sponging technique over the entire flat surface gives a uneven and chipped texture that I think is appropriate for these weapons. I then do one more pass of sponge chipping using heavy metal to represent chips that have gone all the way through the paint of the weapon, as well as the teeth, so I don't have to pick them out individually. For the final step of the weapons, I apply a few thin lines of rainy gray near the teeth edge of the weapon to represent scratches and chips that this weapon would pick up from, again, slashing through ceramite and flesh. This step is completely optional, of course, but I do think it adds a little more texture and interest to the weapons. The rest of the weapons are painted fairly simply, with the brass areas being painted the same way I painted the shoulder pads. The silver portions, along with the other silver parts of the armor, painted first with heavy metal and then a simple wash of Nuln Oil. And finally the black haft was painted with, well, black first of all, and then a highlight of rain gray. For the next and final step, I take my brush, dip it into some Tamiya clear red, and then spray a blast of air from about half an inch away from it to get a nice splatter effect. Now, it may be fairly obvious why I'm doing this, but just in case you didn't pick up on it yet, I imagine these chain weapons this Berserker is carrying as horrifying instruments of war that if they hit anything organic would kick back a massive amount of blood. And instead of just dabbing on some red paint and calling it a day, I figured the best way of showing this arterial spray to literally spray blood-like material onto the model in scale. There are a couple of tricks with this though. The first being, it's kind of hard to hold both your paintbrush, the model, and your airbrush all at the same time. So unless you have someone to help you out on this, I'd recommend holding your paintbrush between your pinky finger and your thumb, and gripping the base of your model that the core gets attached to with your other 3 fingers as shown here. Also, the amount of paint you have on your brush and how far or close you spray your airbrush against that will have a dramatic effect of the end result of spray you got into the model. So I'd highly recommend trying this out a few times on a spare piece of paper before taking it to your nicely painted model. After that though, it's really up to you to determine how much of this effect you want to apply. I probably went a little bit overboard on the chest piece here, as it turned the model kind of pink. But again, these weapons will throw up a ton of blood, so I'm okay with it. While editing this, I realized that a lot of my shots here are actually really out of focus, and I apologize deeply for that. It's kind of garbage quality and you all deserve better, but it's what I have for now, so hopefully you still find this interesting. To finish up the gore effects though, all I do is take some Tamiya clear red and gently dab them onto the teeth of the chain weapons to look like congealed or coagulating gore that's stuck in the teeth. Finally, I attached the model to one of my Urban Rebel bases and it's pretty much done. I'm not going to show the steps of how I did this, the video is running pretty long already, but if you're interested, check out the link in the top upper right hand corner of this video. According to YouTube analytics, only like 30% of people watch to the end of my videos, so for those that are still here, thanks for watching all the way through. It helps my metrics go up and I really appreciate it. As always, I have a ton more tutorials on my channel for you to check out, and you can subscribe or not, doesn't really matter to me, but you should. Thanks for watching, and hobby on.